As we transition to our next activity, I want to give a huge thanks to our co-conveners who are joining us this morning to host our next Flagpole conversation. Salesforce, Amazon Web Services, Juniper Networks, ASU, we are so grateful that you are here today. And I'm lucky, I got a sneak preview of what they're going to be talking about, and I just can't wait. So, Donna, I would love to hand things over to you.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and evening, and I think we're pretty timeless today. It's kind of been fun just looking at who all's participating. Sarita, I think we were like experiencing eggplants and purple things. It's pretty fantastic in that improv session. It's good to see you again. And hoping all of our friends out there in the virtual world who are running around playing soccer are having a blast too. This morning, we've got really a pretty incredible set of folks to talk to you, and really kind of thinking through with you guys around what are the intersections between the things that are happening on our campuses and our schools and our universities, and then out in the world with our industry partners like AWS and Salesforce and Juniper. But just a great discussion today. So I think we'll just move right in. I'm Donna Kidwell. I'm the Chief Technology Officer over at Ed+. We're pretty famously known for ASU Online and all the amazing students that are part of that experience. Trying to figure out relationships like with Starbucks, where we have over something like 12,000 students that are Starbucks partners. And in that relationship with them, we're really figuring out how do you make work and going to school together online really work. In partnerships like Uber, really trying to think through what those would look like. So that's me and the kinds of things that we're up to at Ed+. I think I will hand it off and ask my colleague Phil Kilmarney if he'll do a quick intro. Hey Phil, what's up this morning?
Hey Donna, good morning. Good morning, campers. This has been such a great experience. Thanks for having us here. I'm Phil Kilmarney, Vice President of Innovation over at Salesforce. Had been so lucky to work with ASU for the last couple of years around some work on the blockchain and some interesting things around skills and how we can transfer data in different ways. I come from a background in education. I used to work at the University of Texas System with Donna at the Institute of Transformational Learning, where we were doing really interesting things as well. But moving that concept forward, my role here at Salesforce, I get to really work with our blockchain team and also our Trailhead team, like behind me. Skill up for the future. We had a great little presentation yesterday from Molly on Donna's team, talking about her use of our learning platform and how it's helped build skills in her career. So hopefully we'll talk a little bit today about that, and really excited about something called the Learner Employment Record. And I hope we'll talk a little bit about that today too. It's work happening at the White House level or federal level, trying to really remove the friction between industry and academia by creating a resource that allows folks to have a representation of their credentials with them. So really excited to talk about that too. Thanks.
I feel that is very cool stuff. I think learning records and how we're working between them is going to be kind of a theme throughout. I think I'm really kind of excited to dig into that. And you're right. I do want to give a camper's hat tip out to Molly Leonard. She's kind of one of my favorite stories about bridging these intersections, and that she really started in a completely different part of her career. And then it was Salesforce Trailhead that really created the role that she's got now. So while she's been embedded in an ASU university experience, it was that corporate learning experience inside of Trailhead that kind of changed her stars along with us. So I hope some of you guys got to see her yesterday. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, good morning.
Hey, how you doing?
Really well, thanks.
Digging the flags. Those are very appropriate for a flagpole session.
Yes, indeed. I thought it would work well for this session this morning.
Yeah, I love it. Take it away.
Well, great. Well, I wanted to share my screen if I could. Just want to share a few thoughts with you guys this morning and really talk about, let's see here, if I remember how to do this now. Portion of the screen. Well, maybe I can't share my screen this morning. We'll have to just deal with it.
Yeah, I think you should be good to go.
Okay. Portion of the screen. Let's see. There we go.
Hey,
excellent. Yeah. I just want to start by introducing a little bit about myself on this next slide. That really, this is about just giving you some context about how I see the world. One of the things I wanted to share was I come to this role I have today at Amazon with 25 years of experience in the IT industry, and 20 of those in bringing IT workforce partnerships to education. And it's been an absolute blast of partnering with educators and institutions and enabling access to IT workforce training as part of an academic experience. And I also look at the world from a public service perspective. I served in my state as a state senator for 5 years, and it was almost entirely, all of the policy stuff I worked on was about education and enabling career and technical education in schools. And currently I serve on this Utah State Board of Higher Education, overseeing our effort to really bring more workforce education and training to the table as part of our academic infrastructure in the state. So I've got a lot of passion around this topic, really excited to discuss what I have to share with you guys today. On the next slide, I just want to show 2 quick slides to you guys, just give you context about how I see the world also from an industry view, that as an industry, you know, this is a great manpower report that just talks about the fact that we are seeing an ongoing growing skills gap, a talent shortage of students ready to go into the marketplace based on the current jobs. And if you go to the next slide, you can see that LinkedIn really identifies the fact that there are multiple skills right now that are in demand for companies, and both soft skills and hard skills. And a majority of those skills, there is a gap. Hundreds of thousands of open jobs they can't fill because they can't find the skilled, trained people they need to train. And I want to talk about how we can merge that or create a better partnership between industry and education to achieve that. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll just share a couple of bullet points with you guys. The first one is that as we work together, especially in our local communities, we need to have very strong, connected workforce council partnerships. We have to work together as education and industry to identify the needs that are happening right now and the ones that are coming shortly, and really be more flexible and nimble and fast in creating custom training solutions to meet the local workforce needs. That's hard for education to do from an institutional perspective. It's getting much better, but we've got a long way to go. We also need to really empower and recognize and embrace industry credentials as part of that process. ASU actually does this phenomenally from my view, and we're really proud of our partnership with ASU in that space. And when you look at the importance of vocational technical education and the degree granting side, we really have to figure out our path to enable credit for the vocational technical education students our students achieve, giving them a pathway to an associate's and bachelor's degree if they desire to pursue that. It shouldn't have to be either or, it should be both. And then the last thing is about cost effectiveness. Employers absolutely need support to provide access to both their current employees and future employees to cost-effective, time-efficient training options through our education system. And sometimes institutionally, that's difficult for us to do because we're burdened with so many other obligations as an education system. I just want to point on the next slide real quick that Amazon Web Services is really trying to partner with education globally. We built a bunch of industry recognized, globally recognized industry certifications, but we're creating programs that make it easy to partner with us, giving you access to free curriculum and resources that you can put into an educational pathway to enable students to get those credentials and go on and get good, resilient jobs. And then the last thing I'll just say is, as part of this conversation, is that after we're done, I'm not done. I would love to continue conversation with each of you if you have ideas or thoughts. This next slide really shows my email address. Happy to receive communication from each of you after we're done talking today. And with that, Donna, back to you.
I didn't know you were a senator.
I was.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Thanks.
No, that's pretty powerful stuff, and I think, oh man, as we get into the discussion after this, I definitely have some connections, and now like the policy side, I think Luke, Tate, and I have some questions for you inside of that. But hey, Mike.
Yeah, let me take it, and I'll share my screen as well.
Yeah, take it away. You should also
okay.
have, you should be set up.
Okay, cool. Can you all see the screen? Just make sure. Yes?
We can.
Okay, good, awesome. Yeah, so kind of following up on Aaron, you know, being in in corporate world, in corporate industry, it's kind of interesting because there is always that push-pull of how do we get the people we need to support what we do, as well as make sure that the training curriculums and things like that are established within any university to be able to help provide that. Because I mean, ultimately, that's what it's about, having a workforce that's coming out of the university system that very much is in demand, as opposed to having skills, for example, like maybe you took a COBOL class and it doesn't mean anything. So it's really important that we try to continue to share that kind of information. And because of that, Juniper, we work very closely. It's our highest, and it's our #1 vertical here in terms of, you look at the list of university names in these next couple slides. These are all people that we work with closely, and we do things with them uniquely in some cases, not only just for let's sell people something, but it is about trying to prepare the university to be able to not only have people that can support themselves internally, but to be able to produce students that can support them. And so what I wanted to do first was to just kind of, before I jump into this thing here, was to kind of give you just a little bit on my personal background. I've been around forever. I used to be the VP GM at Siklu, which is a point-to-point company and based in Israel. I did that for 2 years until I decided I wanted to be in the U.S. with Juniper, which I really loved what they had to offer. But I have 40 years of networking experience. I was a VP at AT&T, where we were very proactive about trying to figure out what we were doing to get new employees that were coming out of colleges, right? So there's always programs and things like that that we worked with. I will say that from my personal background, the thing I like is I've been an adjunct professor for over 40 years. And part of the things that I really enjoyed was when I was asked to be on their steering committee. What classes should we be offering in the CIS world to be able to say, here's what we're going to offer, so that they know they could go to an Anheuser-Busch or whatever and know that they were going to have that connection. And so one of my big recommendations that any university would have some kind of a steering committee that is representative and have people from industry on those steering committees to help them do that, because that's an important thing. What Juniper does specifically, and this is, I really like the model, is we have something called our Network Academic Alliance. And so what we do with universities that decide to adopt this is we basically open the kimono in terms of all the resources that we have, whether we're going to teach something online or whether we're going to allow you to just teach our classes individually in a class setting. We provide all the materials and things like that for them to be able to create different course structures. This allows the students, and in fact, what we do is anybody that does this, when the student decides they have passed the class, well, actually, when the instructor says they passed the class, we will actually provide the voucher for them to get to be able to get certified, right? And certifications mean something in the networking industry. And so we allow them to get this. It doesn't cost them anything. They've gone through the class. And this allows the students that leave the university to have almost immediate job opportunities with the fact that they actually have something that is recognized as an important certification, right? And so we do this mainly to be able to help universities do things that are helping their students, but also allow us to, in some cases, we have lots of people that come out of the university system that come directly to work for Juniper because they have exactly what we need, right? So it's something that I'm very proud that we do. It's something that, in my space is kind of unique. And then the other thing that we do along with this, and I'll give you an example of what we do at University of Massachusetts, where they have taught our classes. Again, it can be routing, switching, security, whatever. And as they do this, we also provide them funds back to say, you know what, because you're teaching our classes, we and again, this is more philanthropy, but we will say, we will create a fund that you can then use to hire more teaching assistants, create labs, things that are needed in the college, not to buy our networking equipment. It's just basically to help them to allow the students to have the stuff that they need to have hands-on experience, right? So we do that. as well for a lot of universities. And it's something that I think is a really good model, okay? So when you look at all this, you know, students and the member institutions, we really try to work, and it's about collaborating with the university. It's about collaborating with them to understand what we need, but also to collaborate with what they need, what a university needs to be able to do this, right? And to provide real, true job exposure and things that they can do to make things happen. The other thing that we do that is important is internships. In fact, ASU, we've just hired, I think, 2 or 3 interns. And it is something where we give them real true job experience in the field. And I'm sure AWS and other places do something similar, but we are always actively looking for good students from any university to try to come in, and we will give them full training and make them be prepared to be an engineer, for example, in our world. So that's kind of the nutshell of how we look at it. It is that connection, as you say, between the corporate world and the intersection of the university world to make sure that we truly are in sync and in lockstep, because again, our whole goal is we want to be able to allow students to walk out of ASU and have a job opportunity waiting for them right away. So that's how we look at the world too. Don, back to you.
Oh, thanks, Mike. That's really interesting. And I was watching in the chat, I think figuring out some creative funding ways to approach how to get this done is another thing that we might circle back to. But you've kind of laid the foundation for some really interesting ways that universities and industries can partner for those learning experiences. And Kim, you got to step in here because the work you're doing is some of the most interesting on the planet. So Kim?
Hey everyone, so excited to hear all the things that you're working on. It's so aligned to the way we've been thinking about the world. I was saying, Donna, most exciting in the world is a pretty exciting intro. So Donna started off the call with the idea that for a while ASU has been partnering and rethinking how students can access education in a different way to meet their needs, connected to the workforce, so that we can really paint that larger picture of who people are. Learning Enterprise is really the next iteration of that. So you may know ASU from the concept that we have degree programs and we continue to build kind of collective knowledge of the world through our research. Before we had many programs to serve learners and people around the community and our workforce partners, but it really wasn't housed in a specific contained way that we woke up every day thinking about it. So we've started Learning Enterprise. It's now the 3rd arm of the university. I'm managing director of Learning Enterprise. I didn't mention that. And it's the 3rd arm of the university, specifically designed with the idea that everyone should have universal access to education and opportunity at every stage of life. And why that's really important is this. When you think about the way traditional education has kind of been presented to people, it's you're doing it wrong unless you do it in this very traditional way that you see here on the left. And it really does, whether we say it out loud or not, there's kind of this implication that you did it wrong if you didn't do it this way on the left. And really, we're past that now. We know that everyone is different. The way they need to consume education is different. Where they need to consume that education at a different part in their life is different. And rather than making them conform to our vision of what we think should be their stack, it's time to redesign that stack. It's time to redesign and think about how our job is to serve them in the way in which they need to be served. So you add to that, there's an underlying premise of higher education that is, whether we say it or not, again, we're going to get you a job and we're going to get you a good one. And if you attend university, you're going to walk away with the ability to have better lifelong learning overall. And so as the world changes, if we're not thinking about how to keep that promise in our mind, but also rethink how we stack education, then we're not really doing our job. So when we think about these stacks, I heard everyone on the call just kind of talking about how can we give people the credit they deserve for the things that they've done before? How can we continue to align with industry and do so more in order to make sure that the programs industry is aligning to and creating map into our degree programs so that our degrees are valuable? How do we disaggregate our degrees so that someone could and flip them so that someone could get a certificate early on in a job-related field, get an entry-level job that all stacks into a degree, and then think about their general education classes and things of that nature so that they can really get what they need to start building the blocks both on the education side, but also on the job and career side that they need to be doing concurrently. So those are the things that we're working on. We're excited, all the people on the call here, we have some partnerships with and are thinking about partnerships with. So just excited to continue the conversation with everyone.
Hey, thanks, Kim. Yeah, I know it might sound like hyperbole to say on the planet, but this stuff is hard. It's really hard. And I think it kind of strikes deep at what we, like the models and things that we think we know about the design of learning and how our institutions work. Luke, let me let you step in here and talk a little bit about, and really help us understand some of the perceptions around universal learning and what really is at play there.
Great. Thank you, Donna. And good morning to everybody. It's wonderful to see you. I'm Luke Tate. I'm the Managing Director of our Office of Applied Innovation here at ASU. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways in which this idea of universal learning has taken hold here. It's really been since about 2017, where this idea developed as a rejoinder to universal basic income, which I had been hearing about in the Obama White House, been hearing about in Silicon Valley. Had these billionaires telling me, yes, we're going to destroy everybody's jobs. It's really sad, but we'll give them a universal basic income. They'll be fine. And might it be the case that universal basic income is a decent policy solution for a pandemic crippled employment landscape? Maybe. Is it the solution, however, to the slow change in labor demand resulting from automation entering more spheres? Is it the answer for a long haul trucker who got automated out of their job? Will a $1,000 a month check replace the dignity and the self-worth and the purpose that they derive from their work? No. So my view was, and Michael Crow clearly grabbed a hold of this, universal basic income is not the answer to that problem. Universal learning is. Universal learning, the idea that everyone at every stage of their work deserves the capacity, the opportunity to gain the skills and the knowledge that they need to thrive. And ASU, through the learning enterprise, through many other instantiations across the university, is doing everything we can to ensure that that is actually the case, that every learner, every worker at every stage can gain the skills and knowledge that they need to thrive. So I'll talk about some of the tools that we need, that we're still not all the way down the line in building to ensure that we can actually do that work. Now, universal learning encompasses everybody, but a key subgroup is the mid-career learner. And two things that we know about mid-career learners and the ability to attract them back to a learning environment is, number one, they are highly skeptical. What we have to offer is actually going to be of any value to them. Maybe they've been burned in the past. I won't name names, but there are some education and training providers who haven't done the best job of placing their students' needs at the center of their work. Number two, most mid-career learners don't have access to the information that would help them understand what pathways, what higher level pathways are available to them that they're, say, 80 or 90% qualified for, that they have most of the skills, most of the knowledge, but that there's a delta that they would need to close. Now, ASU is working with partners, including some partners on this call, in figuring out how we can ensure that someone can put in their personal history, their work history, their education history, populate a skill cloud that that is specific to their experiences, where they can say, yes, that's a skill I have, yes, that's one I have, no, I don't have that. And then show them in their current municipality or in their metropolitan area, 5 different higher level jobs and pathways that they're almost ready for, that they're almost qualified for, such that they could even call the hiring manager and overcome that skepticism of what we have to offer being of value to them by saying, hey, if I went to ASU and I took these 2 courses to fill this delta in my skill gap, would I be a candidate for the job? Right? That helps them overcome that skepticism. That helps them see the pathways that could be available to them if only they come back to ASU or go to another training provider or educational institution and take the course or take advantage of the learning opportunity that'll help them gain those skills and close that delta. So that's a tool that we need, that we're in the process of conceptualizing and building to help us deal with the change in the climate, if you will, the the employment climate as a result of shifts in our labor demand. But universal learning also has to help us respond when a storm hits. So about mid-March, early days of the pandemic, my team had ideas flying at us from all over the place. What we ought to be able to do to help our community deal with COVID-19. One of the ideas that came in really caught our eye, which was the idea that we needed to help close any staffing shortages or lack of expertise that might result if we have a surge in our hospitals. And so Andrew Nelson on my team, he and I reached out to Dr. Judith Karshmer, the Dean of the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation. She connected us to Illyria Rascone, top critical care expert. They were able to identify that a key gap in the field was the ability to quickly train existing RNs who had, again, most of the skills that they needed, to also then equip them with the skills that they needed to treat COVID-19 patients in a critical care environment. Andrew, supporting Illyria, connecting her to Ed+, was able to help her get that course developed and stood up in a matter of weeks. It was stood up just before the crisis really hit, the major surge here in Arizona. At last count, we have more than 1,400 RNs enrolled in that course, gaining the skills that they need to help treat COVID-19 patients in critical care. Surveys indicate that roughly 3/4 of those nurses are treating patients here in Arizona. So universal learning and helping people gain the skills they need whenever they need them is a way that we at ASU can help as our economy shifts over time and that slow climate change, but also a way that we can help our community respond when the storm hits. And so it's a direction that we are committed to and will continue to search for new ways to innovate in that space. So again, thank you for the opportunity to join the conversation today.
Luke, that's an amazing story. It's still going to pause for a minute. That's really, and there's so many things that we could unpack in that. I'm still kind of reeling over the speed of it, the ability to respond that quickly for that team to actually put that out and make an impact.
Dr. Rascone and Andrew and the Ed+ team did an amazing job.
Yeah, that's pretty extraordinary. So I've been trying to scan through the chat. So, keep this flowing because I'll weave those things into what we're talking about. And I kind of want to make a way back to something that Laura was talking about, where industry approaches for exec ed programs, but they get hard to do because of costs and all sorts of reasons. Mike, Aaron, there were some themes in what you were talking about around steering committees, and I think you called them workforce councils, Aaron. Yep. So could you guys talk to us a little bit, and Phil, can you talk to us a little bit about like what is it that you are looking for when you approach a university to do something, and what stumbling blocks are you seeing, and then what are you finding out works that gets you to the other side of making that actually happen?
Well, I can start, Bill, if that's okay, just a couple thoughts. I just want to say that a successful workforce council really is a combination of education providers in a given community working together with critical employers in their area. One of the challenges that employers have, especially large employers, is the capacity to get to scale. Often, you see 5, 10, 15, 20 people coming out of the education system with the skill set you need, and you still have to hire roughly 50% of your workforce from out of state. And so I think the key is that you need to have a pipeline from K-12 through tech college to university college infrastructure, and it requires a coordinated effort that is something you need to coordinate more than just once a year. It's a sit down on a regular basis, looking at programmatic approaches to the curriculum offering and how that will meet or eventually meet the workforce demands of the key employers in the state. And there are great examples of that, for example, here in Utah, where we have very close K-16 partnership with local employers that work on long-term planning for jobs. And I think that's the key to success, and it has to be iterative and continual. It can't just be a once every year type of situation. And I know that's really hard for education. That institutional approach, it takes 3 years sometimes to build an accredited program, get it approved, enabled, get the instructor staff and infrastructure in place to make it happen, and then it's 5, 10 years before you can really make a substantive change. And I know that there are great examples of where that's not happening, where there's a lot of positive change that's happening, but that in my mind is the key to having that workforce council and that nimble capacity to quickly respond to the needs of the local employer and individuals in your community.
Aaron, I'll add to that. I think you're completely right around the councils and the speed in which this stuff doesn't happen. I think that we see great things happening all across the country in silos.
Yeah.
But I think to get this to scale, we do need the Rosetta Stone. We need something that can be continually updated over time. And that opentaxonomy.org that I shared in the chat is something I'm really interested in. So the Open Skills Stack Alliance is what's behind this all. And some very big employers like Walmart and companies like, schools like WGU, SNHU, UMGC, others, companies like Salesforce and Workday, other ones, really looking at how we can come together to create this resource where we can get this to happen at scale, where we have a translation method to go to schools, not one-ofs, but at scale. So we have this language, we can communicate the value of what we both bring to this skills-based future and use that as an underpinning, as the foundation of what we're going to build. I don't think it's time to bounce back. It's time to bounce forward. And there's a lot of technologies and approaches we can start to employ to do this, but it does take different thinking. It does take empowerment of the learner. And that is a very, very, hot topic, touchy subject when we start to think about how we can start to empower people with their data. And that's why I think this Rosetta Stone moment is in front of us. We see it happening from the top down, from the federal level down, and we also see it from the bottom up. So super excited about that. And I think that's going to be key component to the future.
Yeah, so I agree with both Phil and Aaron. Probably the enemy of all of this is an inbred way of doing things. Here's what we do, here's what we've taught, and we get comfortable. The worst thing as an instructor I hate to do is you teach a new class, which means you've got to go through and you got to put together all new curriculum and everything. But I will tell you that in the world of networking, for example, things are happening so quickly. Transitions of what the technology is happening so quickly. We, as the university side, have to be more nimble to be able to say, hey, how do I accommodate those? Because what was good yesterday will definitely transition to something different. And if it takes 7 years to get something through, and I've experienced exactly what you said, Phil, where it's you have the idea. I mean, my God, it was one time I tried to say we should teach just project management. I'm a PMP. And so I was passionate. Yeah, we here's exactly what it is. But it became one of those things that people go, well, and 6 years later, they never decided to do it, right? So sometimes you have the bureaucracy and the folks that don't like change will sometimes get in your way. And so all I will say is that when we're dealing with trying to do these things in conjunction, it is about being open to understanding what really is happening in industry and where the skill sets that you need are there, right? And to be able to then say, how do I incorporate that into an existing structure and curriculum? So.
Kim, I'd love for you to jump in here because I think we're looking right at the crux of that. And Aaron, I love, as you're talking, I kind of saw through this challenge of you want a long-range plan for where these things are going to go. But then we know the technology and the skills themselves are shifting in some of these spaces every 6 to 18 months. So long-range planning is great, but then tactically getting underneath that and actually building the programs, something like the open skills work that Phil's talking about, certainly helps us get our language down, get machine readable language down so that we could actually be harnessing some technology to help. But Kim, that doesn't fix the curricula side, right? Our model for how we teach needs to change too. Are you there, Kim? Kim.
I'm here again.
Hey.
Learning from our mistakes is part of what we're supposed to be doing here.
Exactly. Well, and I know, yeah, go ahead.
No, so I just, as I'm hearing this, there's a couple things that stood out to me, and I heard in there some just preconceived notions, right, that we have that if education is more expensive, it's better. If something is longer, it's better. There's all these kind of assumptions about what we believe education to be, and I think we just have to throw a lot of them away. And so a lot of the barriers around going to market faster with curriculum and things of that nature. We're trying to be perfect. We're trying to make sure everything is exactly the way it's going to be. Well, we don't know exactly the way it's going to be. We don't know how it's going to change in a month, in a year. And so if we're trying to spend 2 years to create curriculum to match the needs of now, by the time it's created, it's already going to be outdated. And so it's clearly not going to be perfect. So we need to just kind of rethink how we create. And so instead of thinking about we need something perfect before we go to market, how about we say yes now, get what we need in place, and then figure out how to continually iterate and change the things as they evolve and move forward. So I think in my mind, it's just about saying yes now, thinking about how we can meet learners where they are, employers where they are, say yes, figure out how we do it together, rather than saying, yeah, maybe soon, later, great idea, let's think about that. It's like, no, let's get started on stuff.
Amen.
No, that's pretty beautiful. Hey, Luke, I want to draw you in here too, because so let's say we get some technology like the open skills and the open taxonomy going, and then we tackle kind of the mindset of how we think about building out this curriculum. But the vision you're talking about is also has this like geographic element of being able to be more cognizant about what opportunities are actually around you. So if we could tackle skills, and if we could tackle rethinking the learning experiences, what else is left out there? It just strikes me that there's probably things that we're going to need.
So I think both of the things that you just mentioned are about collapsing barriers, right? They're collapsing barriers between the learner and potential futures. What we're trying to do is help uncover more potential futures for any learner. I think it was John Wilson who made a fantastic point in the chat that not every blacksmith is going to want to go into metallurgy. We also want to provide people with new and different opportunities if they want to learn new and different things. But in every case, that still means collapsing the barriers between the learner and making available to them better knowledge about what is available, and then collapsing the barriers between them and being able to take advantage of that. And part of that is also bringing in new tools and reducing the cost of instruction, improving the effectiveness of instruction. Part of that has to be a willingness on our part to bring more tools into the actual teaching, tutoring, and learning, including more AI-fueled teaching, tutoring, and learning. You know, we don't teach college algebra at ASU the same way that many folks do, with 300 kids in a lecture hall and one professor standing up there with chalk, or I guess these days they might have a marker and a whiteboard, right? We've got folks in an adaptive learning environment where the algorithm is constantly tuning what content is being offered up to them based on how they're performing. But we need to be able to go a step further. We need to be able to have AI-fueled instruction in basic subjects where there are right and wrong answers that can A/B test both across the entire cohort and for any given student what type of instruction leads to the best student performance. That way we can constantly ratchet up the effectiveness of that instruction, testing different pedagogies. And I have to be honest, there is some resistance out there to the incorporation of AI-fueled and big data leveraged instruction and tutoring. We need to be doing this in our student success coaching as well. You know, we have reams of data that could help us do a better job of predicting when a student is going to fail a test or drop out of a course, and be able to intervene with that student with the intervention that we have tested to find out has the best outcome for that particular student. So the tools, we are really in the infancy, I think, of the tools that can be applied to increase the effectiveness of instruction and help more learners thrive.
Can I just add, Donna, something to what Luke said? I really liked the direction we're going here. And I want to start even earlier in the conversation with, unfortunately, many American parents believe that the only path to a good job is to complete a college degree. And they don't value the potential of vocational or technical education as part of that individual's preparation for the workforce. And they view it as an either-or path. It's not just about college or vocational. It's one or the other, and they've just lost, in my opinion, the potential for the American workforce. There are so many opportunities in technical education. And we have, as Luke said, we have reams of data that show that so many of our students are really not prepared or ready for or accustomed to the potential around a college education, but would be incredibly successful in a vocational path or technical education path that leads to very high-paying jobs. So I think part of the conversation is that we need to shift the way that we think about higher education and recognize that it's both. A student can have an industry credential and a college degree if they want to pursue that over time. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys a question. And I've heard President Crow here at ASU say a couple times about how, as a university, we need to recognize where we're actually complicit in causing the problem, like where we are a partner in the troublemaking. And so that kind of gives us a different call to action in terms of being able to solve those challenges. And as you're talking, the way we even think about, well, you go to a vocational school or you go to a university, is that part of the issue? Is it that lack of porosity between the two institutions? I'm trying to think at the institutional level, and the work that Kim's doing to try to kind of really break through that. Is that part of it? Or is it more just the learning experiences themselves? You know, is there an institutional thing at play here?
Donna, I'm looking in the chats and I see this harmful binaries of a degree or nothing mentality. And I think that really captures this idea that you were just talking about, Aaron, this idea that it's one or the other, or it's got to be in this way. And it's, when you think about it, the idea that someone could go to school for 3 years towards their degree, and if they left at that point, have nothing to show for it, means that we really haven't thought about the value of learning in its the flow and ebb that it is, and how we value that as you hit certain milestones within that. I would even argue it could go down to the skill. I think a lot of people on this call would agree, right? That has value all the way through. And so if you reframe in that way, you stop thinking about this or that, or, you know, not valuing something until you have all 4 years.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm thinking, Aaron, back to that LinkedIn slide that you had, and I didn't read through all of them this morning, but one of them's, you know, blockchain's up at the top, and then on the soft side thing, there are things like creativity and collaboration, and we're not going to get any kind of, and Phil Kamarni and I have had some projects together trying to do this. We're not going to get any transformational, learner-oriented blockchain work out there without all those soft skills, without the ability to collaborate. Persuade, I think, was on that list. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do, Mike, Aaron, Phil, how do you see the kinds of experiences that you can bring into the industry side that pull in those soft skills, and where do universities play in that space? Because that's another binary, right? There's these things that we need pretty much everybody to do, and then the hard technical skills.
No, I totally agree with you, Donna. I think some of the, like, if you look at Trailhead, our learning platform, we have content from schools and we have content from other folks that not touch on our technical training around our platform, but there's other things like AI ethics. That would be an amazing thing to be able to reach out to our academic partners to say, these are the skills and competencies we're trying to train around AI ethics. How would you build a course that would allow us to do that for our folks? Not just our learners in Trailhead, but 250,000 businesses that are using this platform to upskill their internal employees. So I think coupling that open taxonomy work with that type of approach gives us a whole new way to think about a marketplace of learning in the context of our business, or in context of our lives, or in context of our purposes, how we work. How do we bring that learning inside our walls that way? I'm really, excited about that opportunity. And I think Trailhead and Amazon Educate and all these different learning platforms that can start to build those bridges very literally to show, not tell this new future anymore. We need to show. And that's what I'm really excited about.
Mike, any thoughts?
Well, I've been trying to figure in my world what we deal with, right? And when you talk about soft skills versus hard skills, right? When people leave university, they're usually green and they don't really have the real world experience of suffering through whatever it is that they have to implement. And so a lot of times those skills aren't there. The baseline skills that you look for when you see somebody leaving a university should at least be critical thinking. And that's why, like, even in where I teach, we actually try to say, is this a job or is this a course that teaches critical thinking? But it has to be able to, for example, if you're going to go into a job in networking, you really should know project management. Again, I go back to the reason I talked about it before, because it's a logical step-by-step. That's not I would call that even though people would call that a soft skill in one way, it's a hard skill because you need to understand logic, progression, what happens next, right? And so the underlying thing of a lot of this is students come out with the ability to do something, but they can't do anything because they don't even have the starting point of having logical thought of where things progress, right? So for me, as I look at what, as we get students, we always try to say, well, what is that underlying soft skill? Well, I will say it's the logical, progressional thinking that you have to have about what needs to be done, what goes next, and how does it all fit together, as opposed to what we teach a lot of times is, here's a program, here's a template of what somebody else did, now you take it and modify it. It doesn't get you to where you say, I'm thinking about where the world goes as in terms of anything. And having those kind of skills, that kind of soft skill, is probably more important to me than somebody that comes out and says, yeah, I wrote a program back 6 months ago.
Yeah. I would add to what Mike is saying, that from an AWS perspective, we place high value on internships and apprenticeships. Those real world experiences transform the student from a knowledge-based expert to a hands-on and real world interaction experience that adds real value to the future employer. There's also less risk for the employer in that internship and apprenticeship scenario. I really like what ASU is particularly doing in this area and how they're trying to partner with the community, the employer community, with internships and apprenticeships for that and many other reasons. But we think that's one of the ways, Donna, to address that gap. But we hear from employers all the time from a higher education perspective in my other role in Utah, how frustrated that our employers are in the state of Utah that students lack basic soft skills as they come out of these associate and four-year degree programs, and that they're really looking for the education infrastructure to step it up and focus on those as well as the technical skills that make them useful in a work setting. It's a challenge.
Yep, absolutely.
So I love this. I just got a Twitter message in from somebody who's in the virtual world and wanted to ask, so lots of modalities in terms of the tech we're using this morning. They wanted to ask, let me make sure I get this right, do employers really value the certifications and the credentials if you don't have that experience? Like if you are experiencing that gap, what do you do? And is that really a knock against you?
Phil?
No, I think our customers do respect that certificate they get from Trailhead to be a certified admin. That is a currency in our ecosystem for sure. I think that that's empowering to people because again, this is free. You can just go here on your own learning journey, and if you want to build digital skills, here they are. But the certifications do cost maybe $100 or something like that. But that is a currency that's seen by our employers to really validate that. But it does, that bit about experience is very important. So Trailhead isn't just about learning, it's about a community. And that's the secret. Everybody thinks it's just about this learning resource. I've been trying to do this for 20 years, trying to put together something where 3 million people would just flock to. That happened here. That's not easy to do. Everybody here knows that.
Yep.
But once you get those people there, what do you delight them with next? I actually think we delight them with a really skills-based profile. They can really empower themselves even further because it becomes a compass for their journey that they don't have currently. They have ways to kind of understand what they understand, but if we can give a really detailed way to see that, I think we're really going to get to something special.
I would just add, Donna, that from a certification perspective for AWS and our customers, that credential is an identifier for a certain skill set that's needed. And because the skills gap is so great, that certification really actually does directly translate into jobs. But I will add this one caveat right now. What's happening with the pandemic is having an impact on that. You have people that have those skills already that are now part of the workforce looking for work, and they will choose those that have more experience over students that just got a certification every day, all day long. So it is a unique challenge. That's why the apprenticeship and internship piece right now is so important. But certification, industry certification is critical in the employer mindset.
Yeah, I agree with you totally, Aaron. You know, when you talk about the certification itself, it is truly a currency, as we just now said, right? It's at least sets the bar of somebody that says, I've gone through this, I have the basic skills to do what I need to do, and for my case, of networking, right? And so it's a currency. But then the internship, as you say, is probably more important, because now this person that has gone through it and got a certification and is now an intern gets real world experience. Now you get to experience that person to see how much they're able to do and what they are capable of, right? Because now you're going to be put in real world situations, thrown into situations where maybe you don't know something, but if you're agile enough and you understand how to do something, those soft skills of being able to easily flex to something else become really important. So I wouldn't underestimate the value of having certifications, but it's a stepping stone that I believe is an important requirement that helps somebody that doesn't have anything to start with, and that gives them at least a place to go where people use those skills.
Can I just add one thing, Donna? Can I just add one thing?
Of course.
I think those internships and apprenticeships have been disrupted as well because of COVID, and we're seeing, there's software in the world like Practera that's going to let people do these internships and apprenticeships remotely. Those are really important tools. But we have this really big moment in front of us where I think internships and apprenticeships can be seen in a different light now with these kinds of technology and this moment in time, where we can start to empower more people through that lens and become context academies in every business, where there's a way to kind of learn these skills, power skills, soft skills, whatever you want to call them, through the context of some type of apprenticeship or internship. That builds a lot of really great opportunity for people. And also we're trying to model it on our platform through a thing called a super badge, where it's not just this linear journey where you can go through, do multiple choice questions and kind of gain some knowledge, but it gives you a project to build and gives you requirements like you would be in the field. Like really you have to perform this task for a customer in a certain context and build that out as an experiential learning moment. And those kind of things are just a step below what I think an internship is. But we're going to see more and more of those that are more project-based and start to demonstrate, something that isn't as good as I think is a real experience, but really close to that you could demonstrate and show to an employer that I can do this, not that I just have a grade that says I can.
So Donna, I have a question for the employers, if that's okay.
Of course.
In a pandemic world where folks aren't able to have as many of those internships available to them or other formal experiences, how do you think about platforms like Kaggle or HackerRank, other ways in which they may not be in a formal internship, but they are engaged in the work and the work is documented? It's not entirely unrelated to this idea of a distributed ledger-based learning record. In which they're engaged in a community and they have proof of their work.
Yep.
To what extent does that help you understand a person's capacities if they can't engage in an internship or other more formal?
Luke, I would say that is valuable. That idea of a portfolio of experiences or projects that they've worked on helps to differentiate, especially in a recruiting setting. And again, it comes back to when we have a COVID-like situation where we have professional IT or cloud workers, for example, that are looking for work. Even in that context, it's difficult not to look at those employment opportunities first. But anything that can differentiate a candidate that's coming out of school that shows real-world hands-on experiences, even through those types of sources that you talked about, Luke, would have value. Great question.
I take it. I have one other thing to say about this is that I think, my career has got to this point. I have no college education. So I think I've always demonstrated or shown what I've been able to do. I think we can give people a lot easier way to do what I've done I've been called a mercenary learner by people. So just what I went out and done on my own, if we can give people a way to do that a lot easier, I think we're going to have a lot more equity in this world around education, where we can get more people to more goals, because as I think Paula Blank says, talent's distributed, opportunity isn't. That's the physical world. The digital world doesn't have to take that tact. So I think that's where we're going to get more people to their goals and empower way more people if we use this digital domain differently.
I see another in the chat, somebody asking about how much importance is placed on the resume. And the resume strikes me as another thing that's, a pretty archaic model. So thoughts on that? How important is that thing? And what is the future of the resume?
All right, now, when you say importance of the resume, when you leave a university and your only experience is going to school, is that what you mean? I mean, because obviously the resume is supposed to document what skills you have and the experiences that you've had that might be relevant to the job that you want.
Yeah, as you asked the question, Amanda kind of dug in, and she says internship skill assessment.
Right, and so that that kind of document really is important. I mean, because that's going to be the first interface you're going to have as someone to say, well, I'll give you an example. I've seen a lot of times people have put together resumes that are from universities starting, and they really, if they had done it differently, would have made a huge difference. But it's kind of put together, slapshod, right? You can tell. So the communication skills in writing, which are always important, as we all know, aren't always there, right? And so as long as it's done correctly and it really exposes that, hey, I'm a new student, here's what I am, and let me show you my flexibility in the world because I've done an internship, as we just saw in the chat, or I've done these things, as what Aaron had said, we've done this project. That's where it is there, but that is kind of a critical document. It's not the end all be all. A lot of times, as you will find out in the business world, people hire people that they know, and so if they know you're a good person, you might have a leg up in the resume. You know what? Yeah, put whatever you want down because I'm gauging you because I know you as an individual. For the rest of us in the world that have to survive, you want that to have high impact. Because it is maybe sometimes the only interface you're going to have with an employer that's looking, and just to see if they're looking for people, they're going to look for things that stand out in a resume. If it's a entry level position.
So I got permission from our fearless counselors to go to 9:02 because we've kind of been rocking and rolling. So we've got like 5 minutes. We can call it a morning here.
I have a quick question, Donna.
Yeah, Kim, I knew you'd take it.
Sorry, it's so exciting to have you all in the room. And we've been thinking a lot about how we design. So a certificate has an implication in it, right? That you're learning the skills that you need. And so we've been thinking a lot about how we design our certificates and what type of learning. So I heard project-based learning and backwards mapping from outcomes that you have to do in the real world. How do you all think about that? What does that look like for you? I'm making an assumption when I think those things are valuable. So I would love to hear how, if I'm a student taking a credential that is mapped in that way, is that valuable to you? And I don't want to lead that question, feel free to say no.
Yeah. Well, I'll just respond that globally for AWS, those things have value. A certificate program that is catered or designed to a specific job outcome in cloud computing, for example. I know that at ASU, you guys have a similar program. And in my perspective, that adds value and credibility to the credentials that we're also offering, these industry credentials that are weaved into it. But it shows a level of commitment to the learning and the expertise. But I would say even more valuable would be a locally constructed certificate program in partnership with our customers that are using AWS technologies so that it's relevant to their specific needs. And that workforce council piece, I think, comes back to the conversation. Are you having that design and discussion with local employers? And then if you are, and that's what they want, then you will see it be very valued in the marketplace. Otherwise, it's just another education offering that really isn't meeting somebody's need.
And for those of us that we are timeless, it is a Friday morning, so we're also going into a weekend. I hope you guys all have restful and health and sane plans for a long weekend.
Well, I'll just do one closing thought, Donna, that this has been a phenomenal session. Loved it. So excited to follow up with people on the conversation. I want to say that we are at a very unique period of time with this COVID pandemic. While it's super difficult, and I'm sad to see all the challenges for people's health and wellness, it is forcing a discussion about the value and use of higher education in a way that I've never seen. And we have an opportunity here to capture these learnings and fundamentally change the way that we do education and enable the conversation we're talking about, leveraging that catalyst. We have to change to meet the needs of learners in this environment. And I'm super excited about it. With that,
Well, I want to thank you guys so much. Mike, Aaron, Phil, Kim, Luke, this has been a fantastic morning. I think we could have gone for another hour easy, because there are all sorts of things that are in the chat that we haven't gotten to. I have a question, or I guess a request for our folks out in that virtual world. If you could /dance and then take a screenshot of these final moments of you guys dancing out in the virtual world as we close this out. I'd find that super fun, and love to see you post that out on social media. And thanks guys so much for being here this morning. This is really a fabulous conversation. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Donna.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Donna. Take care, everybody.
You bet. Aaron,
Thank you.
back over to you.
Yeah, wonderful. Wow, so many thoughts buzzing around in my head. And I'm going to need a few minutes to digest all of that. Thank you to all of our fantastic panelists for giving us a lot to think about and engaging with us in this very important topic. I'm sharing on the screen real quick Karina Branson's sketch of this conversation, some visual notes for us as we end here.